Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the session. Very delighted to be here, and it's my privilege to moderate this discussion regarding supercharging category management and the role that AI plays in category management. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists, Herbert Fonseca and Alpar Kamber. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'd like to do, I'd like to ask both of you to introduce yourselves, talk about the role that you play in this field and your experiences, but with that, please give us some examples around the role that digital has played in a procurement transformation that you've been a part of. So, Herbert, would you go first?
Yeah, sure. Herbert Fonseca, as Julie said. I'm part of Novartis, and in my current role, I have been part of an innovation group, Disruptive innovation group, and what we do there is we operate very much like a startup, where we identify a problem. We look for investors willing to sponsor that solution for that problem, and then we go about trying to solve it, right? It has been quite interesting, a lot of successes and a lot of failures too. And we don't focus exclusively on procurement only, but since I come from procurement, I'm the key stakeholder for that group. Maybe a disclaimer, right? A couple of disclaimers. I speak on behalf of my own experiences, not on behalf of the company that I work for. And second, I am a bit dyslexic, so if you hear something strange, maybe there's dyslexia speaking. To your question, Julie, on digital, it has been instrumental, right, for the function. I am about to complete 12 years with the company, and I've been through several major transformations. So from enabling the function to operate on a global scale across multiple service centers when that was created back in 2014, all the way to most recently when we started to introduce best-of-breed solutions on top of our ERP platform. It has always been an instrumental piece of what we do in the function, and very important piece of the function as a whole.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Alpar?
Sure. I'm Alpar Kamber. I am the founder and CEO of a company called WNS Denali. We provide technology, we provide advisory, strategy, and execution services to procurement organizations globally to help augment and make the procurement ecosystem more robust. I've been with Denali, WNS Denali, for about 15 years now, since its start. And it's been a journey. So I think if I go back to how I actually got into procurement, it was through a digital intervention innovation with a company called Free Markets, where pioneered reverse auctions. So when internet was up and coming, leveraging the internet to conduct negotiations, that was the big idea. And it definitely had a big impact in the early days, right? So to bring that power of transparency into the negotiations, a lot of global companies have adopted it. It created some good disruption in the whole procurement function. And I think since then, when I look at the procurement as a function, we like to look at it in 3 layers. There's the transactional part of procurement, which is the busy work. And then there's the tactical part of procurement, which is more project-based, running RFPs and contracts and managing suppliers. And there's the strategic layer, which is category management and creating a procurement roadmap. And technology is definitely, my introduction to it was right in the middle on how sourcing and negotiations got conducted using technology. But since then, I think there's been a lot of innovation and focus around automating the bottom layer, the transactional part of procurement, in hopes of more efficiency, right? In hopes of removing friction from the process, from how procurement gets done. And I think there's been very little focus on how do we make it more effective. How do we make the strategic part, which is category management, or sourcing and contracting, more effective rather than more efficient. So I think that's really an interesting area that we've been spending a lot of time on. which we'll talk about today.
All right. So Alpar, you mentioned the procurement ecosystem, and we talk a lot about that to our clients at WNS Denali. So elaborate on that a bit more, especially as it pertains to the part of that relating to AI and digital.
Sure. So I think there's been a lot of talks around ecosystem. And I think for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, when we look at how we maximize the value of procurement, it's not just one thing. It's not just how you do sourcing more effectively and efficiently. It's not how you, you know, onboard your suppliers. It's not how you contract with suppliers and how long it takes and what you put into it. It's a lot of many things that needs to come together. You know, I call it connecting the dots, right? So you have a lot of data, especially in the last, you know, 10 years when digital platforms have gone into enabling procurement. It's producing a lot of data. You know, before it was a data problem where you didn't have data, but I think we've come a long way in terms of having data available to us. So data is one big piece of the ecosystem. But there are many players that produce that data. You have suppliers, you have, you know, sourcing managers, you have category managers, you have your legal function, you have finance, you have your lines of business, stakeholders who are making decisions. And I think we need to think about the ecosystem as a whole and connect the dots. How do these different players in the ecosystem work well with each other? You know, and feed off of the things that are produced by them, the decisions and the data that are created by them. So definitely, you know, digital has an important role in making use of that data and connecting the dots for these different players to make the ecosystem more robust and well-functioning.
So Herbert, I'd be interested to hear from you now that Alpar's defined, you know, how we look at the ecosystems. How do you connect the dots at Novartis in your role?
So speaking specifically in terms of the tools and solutions, I joke that at Novartis we've been very spoiled, just like rich kids, right? We had all the toys that you can imagine to play with, and some of these they stick. Right, and just like apps on your phone, right? You can download everything, right? Some very cheap, you download and you start using, but some you continue using, some you don't, right? To me, this is how you can show proof that the solution really is adding the value, right? That the different players in the ecosystem are actually benefiting from the value that the solution can bring, and again, some stay, and those are the ones that you really consider value contributors to the ecosystem.
Right. Well, and that raises a very interesting question, especially when you say the tools that actually stick, right? Because the tools actually have to provide the business value. So what would you say would be some of the challenges, or maybe the biggest challenge around implementing AI, especially with regards to category management? Because we're talking about the upstream, we're talking about the strategic activities. And so what would you say are some of the largest challenges?
Yeah, so first of all, when I think about advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, to deal with the more strategic activities, I think we need to think broader than just finding a way to replace the activities that are done today by humans, right? So when you think about intelligence augmentation, right, just to use another buzzword, it cannot be just a bit more of what's done today, right? It has to be much more than that. That's how I believe. Now, there are many obstacles, right? And a key one that is very obvious, but people sometimes don't consider that well, is that for different companies, different categories have a very different level of importance, right? So thinking of what is really key for your customer is essential, right? And if you try to address all categories that you have in the procurement portfolio the same way, you're going to be missing the point, right? Especially because the most important categories for your business are going to get a lot more resources than the categories that are not that important, right? So some of the presentations that I saw over the course of the day today talk about the relevance of indirect procurement, for example, right? For some companies, indirect procurement may be core of what they do. If that is the case, it's a different game, right? So when you think about that, think about the problem you're trying to solve and the game that you're playing. Because then you have a very clear connection to the kind of things that you need and you don't, right? Do you need to deal with all the categories the same way? I don't believe so, right? But you need to prioritize, and the ones you prioritize are the ones that are more important for your business, so stakeholders will have a say. Something else I can say, Julie, is that we have to remember also when you think about customers that a lot of the customers don't speak category management, right? For them, it's not the same as procurement. And don't get me wrong, right? The classification that we do in procurement across the different things that we buy makes a lot of sense, right? But think, for example, professional services, right? It means many different things to many different customers, right? So when you think about a strategy for that category, it has to be a different way to approach it because, again, customer expectations are very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you don't think about those, right, there's no way a digital solution will help you as much as you would expect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Alpar, interestingly enough, same question to you, but also, do you think the approach should be consistent, right? If you're thinking about integrating AI into category management, or are there differing solutions if we think about even how we implement at our clients, right? Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit more about the challenges, but as well as consistency or not around approach.
Yeah. So I think category management, since the topic is the role of AI and automation in enabling and supercharging category management, we've been on a journey for the last 10 years or so to make category management more effective. And that starts with people, with skill set, with mindset, thinking like a CEO of your own category, having a plan, having a vision, alignment with your stakeholders, understanding your stakeholders, and then understanding your suppliers, and then developing a plan to create value, to manage risk, to reduce cost, to innovate, to accelerate go-to-market. So there's different, objectives. And then, so when you think about the role of AI and technology in enabling this, what we just said, category management, there's different layers. And again, it's about connecting the dots. So if I'm a category manager, what do I need to make my job more effective? Today we've heard this morning from Chris, does AI replace humans, right? Will it replace humans and the category management? The answer is no. I think it makes human more effective. You still need human intelligence to be able to, drive and own the decisions and the strategy and, the execution of it, but technology can make it much more effective. So I'll give you an example. Again, if I'm a category manager and if I have a platform that can look my historical, patterns, so whether that's the rate we're adding new suppliers, whether, the things that we're ordering and buying at what pace, our terms of contracts across the board of different suppliers for my category, and then connect the dots for me and marry that with forecasts, what's happening in the market, and gives me insights, not only data, but gives me insights so that I can use those insights to bring to my stakeholders, have a discussion with them, understand where they're going with their function, and how I can enable our supplier strategy, our go-to-market strategy, aligning with their objectives. That would be one effective, rather than crunching data in Excel and try to ask questions and dig up information. If that data and that information was already turned into insights available to me, that would be very valuable. A second one, is we talked about know your suppliers, know your stakeholders. Sales organization does that very well. They've been there's a whole sector called CRM, customer relationship management. We don't have one for stakeholder relationship management. So wouldn't it be great if I know my stakeholders, what I've done with them, how I interacted with them, what projects we've done for them, what were the results, so I can get better and improve that relationship over time? That's another great tool, and it can give me recommendations on things to work with them. That would be another example of using machine learning AI from processing the data and what's happening in the market, marrying it, and bring some insights to me that I can leverage in my job. So those are the things that we've been working on since the last several years, and bringing a platform called Category Track. Well, you can visit our booth and take a look at it, and that's what makes the function more effective, is insight, stakeholder management, pipeline and savings management, and then on top of it, we wanted to remove the friction. So going back to your question about making it stick, why it doesn't stick, is if there's still friction in using that app, then people won't adopt. So how do you remove that friction? By bringing in an intelligent agent and interaction, like an Alexa. Think about an Alexa sitting on top of it. Hey Pia, and ours is called Pia. Hey Pia, what have I spent in this category over the last 12 months? How is it trending? And if that information was automatically presented to you, or when was the last time I engaged with such and such stakeholder, and how was that project? So digging out information in your project track and giving it to you. So I think that's kind of the vision that we're seeing, is removing that friction to making these technology much more effective and stick.
So Herbert, Alpar has the opinion that AI would not replace category managers. What's your opinion around that?
I agree, and I touched a bit on that before, right? It's going to change, right? We don't know exactly the direction this is going to go. I think it's very exciting to see so many startups like we see in this conference this week working on that technology. But like I said, I think we need to think about what else. Right? It's not just to replicate what the category managers do. It's not just to simply add a bit more. Right? I believe that the more it changes, right, the more it transforms, the more impactful it will be. Right? So for example, someone was mentioning earlier today that sometimes the strategy is old the moment you finish it. Right? How can you prevent that? Right? It's not only a matter of using technology to do that, but what kind of different things you need to do, right? What kind of different dots you need to connect, right? That allow that strategy to be permanently relevant, right? So that requires more than just, okay, so I have better software that can do it, right? I think it's also the approach that you take, the kind of priority that you set, right? And all those things combined will help transform whatever we understand as category management today.
Right, great. So we're coming up on the 10-minute mark, so I want to mention here, if any of you have the questions, please have them flowing in, and we'll accumulate those. But with that, I want to ask one other question around, really it brings to mind, because we're talking about whether it's possible for AI to replace that human element. So one of the biggest challenges I know that we have in our business today is around the talent market. And so with that, if we think about that, Alpar, what's your perspective? Is there a role that AI digital plays, considering the challenges that we're having globally in the talent market and what's going on there? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, talent market, I definitely agree. I don't think anybody here would dispute that, the talent crunch and scarcity that we're seeing. And I think people definitely want to do more meaningful work. And I think the technology's role, as it becomes more sticky, as it's leveraged in the right way, will definitely reduce the need for human intelligence, and from a pure capacity perspective. So, taking again category management as an example, if today one person manages, one of your categories, I think with the help of some of the AI tools and digital technology that I just mentioned, they could be able to manage multiple categories. Instead of having the organization needing multiple people to do category management, they can actually drive productivity as well as effectiveness in how that gets done, which in these times definitely is a plus, as A, the workforce wants to do more meaningful work, and B, there's not enough of them, will definitely help organizations to address that problem. I don't know what you think, Herbert.
I'm not so sure, Alpar.
Okay.
I think knowledge and experience will always have an important role. The pressure to reduce headcount and do more with less is always going to be there, right? But I also think that the notion of do more with less can be more than, okay, I have one person doing multiple categories instead of one person per category. And the way I look at it is in terms of survival of the fittest even, right? So if you are really good and if you show and demonstrate that you can add the value, right, you will be kept as a category manager doing whatever category that is, right? I personally worked across many, right? And sometimes I've been categorized as the packaging guy, the IT guy, right? And I'm not, I'm none of those, right? I'm actually the business guy, right? And I like to see myself in that way. And one example I can share that helps understand a bit how I see the evolution of how talent can develop and so on is something actually related to how my kids are being trained in school today, right? So they go to school in Switzerland, and I recently saw that after they take a test, they answer a survey that includes some of the questions they got wrong, and depending on the questions and the answers that they gave to the test that they took, it takes them to a Khan Academy training they can watch and learn before the next class takes, right? So imagine something like that for category managers, right? You've done something, you didn't quite get it right, or something is not as up to standard as the stakeholder expected. Could you have something, some level of intelligence that will help you improve, right? Develop yourself as a talent. So again, back to survival of the fittest, you actually become better and better capable of adding value. Those kind of ideas that I think can change the way the professional work, much more than the constant pressure for do more with less.
Yeah, great. Great. Well, we have a few questions, so thank you for that from the audience. So the first one's actually directed for you, Herbert. So what's a real-life example in procurement at Novartis that actually succeeded in sticking?
That's a good one. Analytics is the easy answer, right? So everything that you do that helps folks know their numbers is always going to go a long way, right? Now, if you make it easy on them, or if you make it a little bit harder, makes a big difference. But again, if you don't know your numbers, you are in the wrong spot.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to mention names, right? Yeah. But if you're interested, look me up and we can talk about it.
Excellent. Yeah. Good. Okay, so can either one of you, both of you, mention a real example of a category strategy that was recently enabled by AI? So details around the plans, executive sign-off, how progress was tracked, et cetera.
Also for me?
For either one of you, or both.
You want to give it a try? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a specific question. I don't know if there is one specific. Well, I think one of our clients were definitely looking for revamping their travel category. And I think given what's going on in the travel industry and increased prices and demand and things opening up, you know, they were able to crunch a lot of data internally in terms of what was pre-COVID levels in terms of spending, in terms of behaviors, and then marry that with the changes that are happening in the travel industry in terms of you know, access to pricing, access to, and since then I think there's also new types of hotels that have been in the market. So using some of that intelligence to be able to marry that to produce a category strategy. Again, that strategy is still produced by a category manager, but again, the internal data analysis and insights and the external forecast as well as the current market dynamics were presented to that person, which then needs to be taken and get sign off from their executives. And then how you put that to use then is a different question, which is then comes with policies and leveraging an agent like PIA, in terms of bringing the end user when they're ready to book travel and guiding them through your policies and the channels that they have to go book, marrying that with a travel. And there's a lot of also technology has been evolving in terms of guided buying, right? So today your usual procurement platforms doesn't address the complexities of the travel category. So actually, travel companies specifically have been investing into these platforms in the market to bring real-time decision making, at the power of the end user when they're making travel decisions, which then reflects in savings and efficiency and overall optimization of that spend. So I think those are things that were developed as a category strategy, but how you put it to action then comes in different shapes and form.
Great. So Herbert, this is for you. So would or could AI completely take ownership on some category management categories that are not core? So for example, office supplies. We've been talking about it might be an all or nothing, right, from a humanization standpoint, but
yeah, I would ask a slightly different question, right? So why would you do category management for office supplies to begin with, right? What is the problem that you're trying to solve with category management, right? And maybe category management is the solution, maybe not, right? If you're Office Depot, office supplies is your category, right? But you're not buying to offer to your employees, you're actually buying to offer to other customers, right? So in a company like Staples or Office Depot, office supplies is essential, right? Yeah. But not for Novartis, right? So think about it this way. That's the view that I think it's more relevant, right? To think about what exactly is the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, no, very good.
And I think to add to that, you're right? It's fit for purpose. Not every category is the same way it can be handled. So to that original question, then how does AI, does it replace or does it go further along in replacing human intelligence for some of the categories like office supplies? Well, I think the answer is yes. The complexity and the need for human intervention, I think, is the question. If it's more of a maintenance of the pricing and the new products, et cetera, where it can be done through leveraging an algorithm that thinks that and constantly updates it, maybe. I think that there is something there, but I haven't seen it to be applied yet to that degree where no human intelligence is used in category management.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you both. We have a few other questions here, so I'm sorry that we didn't get to them. We're running out of time, but please do come by our booth at WNS Denali. We'd be delighted to answer some of the questions that weren't taken. One thing that I'd like to share, first of all, thank you so much for all of your insights. This was a pleasure to moderate the discussion. WNS Denali is sponsoring the after party tonight, and I mention that because Alpar, I understand you have a second job that you're supposed to do this evening for the after party. Do you want to tell the audience about that?
Yeah, I will attempt to use AI and automation and do a DJ set. And I'll talk about that later on. So please come and listen and enjoy the festivities later.
Right.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you.